Today on Inspired Money.
Generally speaking, if you're the one doing the work, if you're the one checking things off your to-do list, then you're falling behind because doing a task doesn't address the reason it had to be done to start with. So tomorrow you'll have to do the task again. And this is an illusion. Working harder and faster doesn't move the ball forward because tomorrow you'll still have to work harder and faster.
This is episode 164 with the founder of Mindset Performance, Jarrod Haning. Welcome to Inspired Money. My name is Andy Wong, a managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. Each week, we bring you an interesting person to help you get inspired, shift your perspectives on money, and achieve incredible things. From making it to giving it away, Inspired Money means making a difference, creating something bigger than oneself, and maybe, just maybe, making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Inspired Moneymaker, welcome back. If this is your first time listening, welcome. My family and I almost went apple picking this weekend. It turns out the farm that we visited just closed out its apple season. That was a bummer. But there were goats and donkeys and pony rides. Our 8-year-old wanted to check out the pony rides. She and I walked over, and as we got closer, I saw the sign that read, "Pony rides $10. I told her the cost, and I asked her if she was still interested. Without even thinking, she said no and moved on. I guess we have her well trained. I did exhale a sigh of relief, though. Where I was happy to spend more than $10 were on apple cider slushes and apple cider donuts. Included in the cost of admission was a corn maze. That was a lot of fun. I can't believe that the fall season is here. What have you been doing? I noticed that we've been doing a lot more activities outside, which has been really good. We're just trying to do as much as we can before it gets too cold. Our guest today is Jarrod Haning, Master Coach at Mindset Performance. Jarrod talks about corn mazes. Have you ever been to one? Sometimes when you're in a corn maze, you have no idea if you should go left or right. But what if you had a ladder? Climb up with a bird's eye view, and suddenly the maze is no longer a mystery. That's what Jarrod says that he does for business owners. He teaches business owners how to break 7 figures by thinking at a higher level. He's an award-winning speaker. He's delivered 4 TEDx talks related to mindset performance. As you're about to hear, he's a fascinating guy. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to Jarrod today is because he says the less you do, the more you can make. We all want some of that, right? In this episode, you'll learn what it means to think at a higher level, changing your thinking to achieve better performance. Jarrod was a classically trained musician who knows how to deliver high-level viola solos and public speaking. And then what we can learn about thinking patterns of success from 7-figure earners. Now let's get inspired with Jarrod Haning. Jarrod, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Good to be here.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
First memory of money was there was a toy at Radio Shack. I think it was like maybe $100. And this was a little kind of robotic arm that you could move around and you could like pick up a pencil and draw with it or whatever. And I just remember being there with my parents and I didn't have enough money. And my parents were recognizing the toy for what it was, something that looked cooler than it would actually be to use. And I'd probably use it for 10 minutes and stop. Like, I didn't interpret it as them being unsupportive or anything like that. I just remember feeling inadequate, feeling like I don't have enough money. And that was just a crummy feeling. I didn't like it.
Were you motivated to go try to figure out how you could make $100 and buy this robotic arm? Like, what was the takeaway after that?
I did start putting together plans. Like, what can I do? What can I mow grass? Can I mow enough grass to come up with $100 to do this? Can I do one of those work from home opportunities in the back of the Boy Scouts magazine, selling greeting cards or whatever? Because I think at that time I had tried one of those before and realized that door-to-door sales just wasn't for me. So I remember going home and being somewhat torn that I couldn't seem to come up with a way that was going to work something that would eventually get me to that amount of money in a reasonable period of time. And I think eventually I just scrapped the project and, oh, well, life goes on.
It was met with a harsh reality.
Yes, I came up short. I did. Sorry, I know that's not a real inspiring story. It's just the first memory of money that I have.
I like it. It's very real. And I'm excited to have you on the show today because you're a performance coach. You help business owners to think at a higher level. Before we get to that, your resume is kind of wild. Let me see if I can do this in one breath. You were principal viola in the South Carolina Philharmonic. You're a licensed pilot, licensed home builder, licensed skydiver, 4-time TEDx speaker. You can split an arrow at 50 feet, Robin Hood style. Give us some context because there's a lot here. How did you arrive to what you're doing today?
I love learning. Every year, I usually pick up a new challenge to learn and just kind of enjoy tinkering with it. And I get bored after a while. And the boredom seems to be like once I've reached about 80% mastery with that skill. It's like I feel bored. I want to go learn something else. I noticed when I was a kid that in school, I didn't take study hall. I was in orchestra or, shop, or I had some kind of actual learning class. And simply because I didn't take study hall, I was able to graduate high school a full year early. Apparently, squandering your life away is just standard practice. It's a part of the high school curriculum. And I was at a place where I was either going to drop out of high school because I was so miserable or just graduate early and get it over with. So I did. I graduated a full year early, went to college. And I've noticed that whatever that mechanism is, I could spend my time on this huge time wasting activity like watching TV, or I could spend it learning a new skill. I don't consider myself to have like a crazy wide variety of skills mastered and experiences. It's just that over a lifetime, if you're spending your time learning and growing, then you're just going to accumulate more things you can do as opposed to spending your time going to movies and watching TV.
Jarrod, you mentioned 80% mastery, and then you kind of get bored and want to move on. You spent a significant part of your life playing music, and you described viola as a mental illness for you in that you had to play, but you hated playing solos.
Yes. Okay. So many things there. The boredom with 80% mastery is if most people, if they just spend a little time chipping away at that one thing every day, it doesn't take long to get at least 80% mastery. I found that with splitting an arrow, Robin Hood style. In the beginning, it was a challenge to get the arrows close enough that you could be consistent. And then you start to get really close. So now you're just like destroying arrows. It gets expensive for a little while because you're just breaking arrows. You're not actually splitting them. And then you get to where you can split them. And at that point, archers who continue to shoot, they'll put up a target that has multiple bullseyes on it. And they are only putting one arrow in each bullseye because they are so effective, so efficient and proficient that if they try to put more than one arrow in the same bullseye, they end up destroying them because they're just too close together. And so when I reached that point, it became boring. It's like, oh, well, now that I know the secret, it's boring. Like, whoopee, I hit the bullseye again. So what? Music, though, was in fact a mental illness. I could not do it. I was compelled. Why was it not boring? I think maybe it was not boring because I never reached 80% proficiency. There was always 100 things in whatever piece of music I was playing that I felt were almost out of my control. I couldn't master them. And so I just dedicated hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Ended up making my living, 20 years, full-time classical music, principal viola, South Carolina Philharmonic. But no, that never got boring, mainly because I never felt like I reached a level of mastery. It was just constant. Oh my God, how can I make this better and better and better? But the stage fright, I'm glad you mentioned that because that is a weird aspect of music. People go into music because they have this thing they want to share and it resonates with their soul. And like they can't not do it. They have to be engaged in making music all the time. And that's where I was. But yet, whenever it came time to share it on the stage, playing a solo, a recital, concerto, whatever it was, I would be consumed with stage fright. I would feel like I was having this out of body experience. And I wouldn't be able to play very well. My performance would just kind of be rote mechanical, but not actually me actively creating in the moment. And it was such a miserable experience that I would leave the stage and just want to sell my instrument because it's just, get me out of here. I can't do this anymore.
Was this only in the early stages of your career, or did it last for a while?
It lasted for a long time until I learned how to break it.
And how far into your 20 years did you start really working on that and trying to figure out what's in your control?
Well, at least 15 years. So at this point, I had been playing music for probably 30 years. And the whole time, like you hate it, it's a miserable experience. And so you're doing everything you know to do to avoid that. But all the stuff that people tell you to do just makes the problem worse. Study your music really well, write it out by hand. Be sure that you're practiced. Be sure that you can play everything really well so that it's easy for you. Practice over practice so that it's super easy. Eat a banana before you go on stage because the potassium helps your body to regulate this hormone or whatever. Learn meditation, practice breathing. It just made it worse.
Sounds like you tried it all.
Oh yeah. Worse and worse and worse and worse and worse until it dawned on me that I could just practice what I preach. So at this point, I had been speaking, doing corporate work. I would talk on the musical secrets of leadership. I talk on the musical secrets of productivity. And I was teaching people how to access different parts of their brain, kind of really neat exercises for that. And I was sitting on stage and it dawned on me, oh crap, I can apply that to this situation where I need a breakthrough in my relationship with performing. Man, I can just apply it here. So the way it works is the only reason you have the problems in your life that you do, you don't have enough time, don't have enough money, don't have enough health, don't have enough relationships. The only reason you have those persistent problems is because you don't have bigger problems in your life to be up to. So, if your nonprofit needs to put together $10,000 this month, then that's your problem. And you're sitting in a room trying to figure out how we're going to solve this problem. But down the road, there's a nonprofit that has to come up with $100,000 this month. They have a bigger problem. So go sit in their room and listen to the types of ideas that they come up with, because that will get your brain thinking on a higher level. And after a while, you realize that $10,000 is small potatoes. It's no big deal. So when I'm trying to play the solo, it's trying to look good, trying to avoid looking bad, trying to get all the notes right, trying to not make any mistakes, trying to play my best. Well, the thing with most of those that I mentioned is they are targets that don't exist. There is no point in time that you can say that was my best. It doesn't exist. So you're pursuing things that you can't hit. So instead of small potatoes, trying to look good, trying to get all the notes right, trying to be perfect, I took on something much bigger. So I looked at the music and I asked myself, like, why do I want to share this with the audience anyways? What is this passage of music about? And in that moment, in that piece, for whatever reason, I felt like that passage of music was about the felt experience, the received experience of being loved. And I decided that I was going to be up to something much bigger. I was going to take a stand for what was possible for my audience, that during that passage of music, they would have the received, felt experience of being loved. And that's what I was going to be up to. And this was completely different than anything I had done before. So when I began to play the solo, my brain kicked into the old program, which was, what about this note? Oh, you could miss that note. Oh, this is difficult. Oh, you missed this one in practice. Oh, what if you get this one wrong? So my brain kicked in with that. And every note, I just recommitted myself to standing for what was possible. And I would literally have to say to that voice, that's fine. I could miss it, but that's not why I'm playing. I'm playing that my audience would have the felt experience of being loved. Every single note, I would have to recommit my purpose for playing. It was hard. It took a lot of focus to keep aiming at that thing. However, at the end of the solo, it turns out that I had played better under pressure than I ever had before. I had felt more focused and clear and alive and purposeful and in control and relaxed and enjoying it. And when it was over, I had an experience that I had never had before. I couldn't wait to do it again. And I had never had that experience before when it came to solos and performance anxiety. So taking on a bigger problem caused my other problems to just kind of fade away.
When you're in that moment and you're playing the solo, is it the thought in your head in trying to just stay focused on that bigger goal, or is it focusing on a feeling?
For me, it was the feeling, remembering how you want them to feel and giving yourself permission to feel that way now. I was given a TEDx talk, and there was a lady backstage who was in the throes of performance anxiety, and she's all worked up and starting to hyperventilate and all the stuff people go through when they're terrified of speaking in public. And the people are coming by giving her the normal bad advice. Oh, don't worry about it. Oh, just do your best. Oh, imagine the audience in their underwear. And it just makes it worse. And it makes it worse because it makes you a passenger in the vehicle and distracts you from the fact that you're the one who built the vehicle. So I ask her, I say, hey, why was this story important to you? And she says, when this event happened in my life, I felt delighted. Instantly, her face changed. Instantly. She's now starting to smile, remembering how she felt. That's the key. Remember what you want. So then I say, well, how do you want your audience to feel while they're hearing this? And she says, oh, I want them to feel delighted too. And now she has an even bigger smile. Her countenance is totally different. And so I say, could you give yourself permission to feel delighted now? Like before you go on stage, regardless of whether or not you give a good talk, could you just give yourself permission to feel delighted now? She's like, yeah, I could. And she's smiling even bigger now, right? And I say, would you do something crazy like that? Are you the kind of person that would give yourself permission to feel delighted regardless of having a reason to? She's like, yeah, I would do that. And then I just say, well, the last question is when? And so now she's going out on stage, sharing delight with her audience, having kind of a conversation with them, remembering that the whole reason she's doing this is because she wants them to experience this delight. Before, her plan was to hold her breath in hopes that her audience would breathe, to withhold delight from herself in hopes that her audience would be impressed with the perfection of her oratory and her script and her composition. It doesn't work that way. You have to give yourself permission before you can give them the experience.
I like that. It's powerful because part of before going out there before the crowd, you have physiological responses that you can't control. Like your heart starts beating faster. But if you can focus on your goal, on the outcome, you can kind of combat that. You can get through it so that you can perform at your best. Was it your performance anxiety that led you to find Robert Hartman's work?
No, Robert Hartman's work found me. I was at an event, and I was in line like to get some food with some other folks at the event, and we were just kind of kicking around what we do. And I mentioned, hey, I talk on the musical secrets of performance and musical secrets of leadership. And we look at how the brain makes sense of sound, how it makes sense of language, and how it translates that and produces emotion. Why it is that you hear something and have an emotional response to the sound. Like we look at that mechanism so you can learn how to hack it and use it for your advantage, for a greater focus during your day or greater productivity or persuasion or whatever it is. And this guy goes, oh my gosh, have you ever heard of the mind scan and the work of Robert Hartman? I was like, no, I haven't. Tell me about it. He goes, here's a link. Try the mind scan. Let me know what you think. It kind of maps out the way your brain solves problems, prints up a graph of your thinking patterns. And by doing that, we're able to see where any blind spots in your thinking are that are tripping you up, things that would cause you to be making what seem to be good decisions because they're rational and logical, but they keep causing you to not have enough time or not have enough money. Or breakthroughs, things that maybe your mind hasn't thought of yet. So this map of the way the thinking patterns are laid out and how you solve them, that map kind of became the missing link for the work that I was doing. Here I am teaching people how to access different parts of their brain on demand. And now I've got access to show them, well, this is how you're currently using your talents and your mind. So they can see better the pathway to what's really possible. But no. The work of Robert Hartman found me, and I'm very thankful.
Coming up, Jarrod shares what we can learn about how successful people think, a better way to think about your to-do list, and listen to the end for a story about Gandhi that just might empower you to live your best life. All that and more right after this short break. The show notes for this episode can be found at inspiredmoney.fm/164. If you're listening in your car or wherever you are, check the show notes if you want to learn more about Jarrod, mind scans, and all other things mentioned in this episode. It's time for the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. One of the easiest and worst things to do with your money is to put it on the back burner. I say worst because if it's on your to-do list but keeps getting neglected, it tends to stay there. Days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months. Before you know it, reviewing your accounts and taking care of your money is something that you meant to do years ago. Let's make sure that that doesn't happen. You can do that today by carving out time for a money minute and doing this every day. Taking a money minute could mean adding up all your expenses you had for the day and adding it to a spreadsheet or an app. It could also mean logging in to check your account balances every day. This is a great practice because sometimes you'll see a strange charge or catch an error on your credit card. Your Money Minute is also a great time to quickly review your short and long-term goals. Staying connected with your money to see what your money is doing, where you are relative to your goals, and staying on top of your checking, retirement, and other accounts will help you to be more intentional about your financial decisions on a daily basis. If you've been putting off your finances for a while, just start with a 1-minute review every morning. Start small, but be consistent. This is a habit that you want to develop because it can have a massive impact on your finances and future. That's the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Inspired Money is brought to you by Runnymede Capital Management. We help you to plan, invest, and worry less. Our Inspired Moneymaker of the Week is Chris Curran. Do you remember Chris? Chris was our guest on Inspired Money episode 107 entitled Money, Meditation, and a Transformed Life. Chris just published episode 200 of the Podcast Engineering Show. Congratulations to Chris on this huge milestone in revamping his website at podcastengineeringschool.com. So let's all congratulate Chris. And I have a correction from last week's Inspired Moneymaker of the Week, Lael Sturm. Although I know how to pronounce his name, I mispronounced it when recording. My apologies for that. Now, Inspired Moneymaker, if you want to be an Inspired Moneymaker of the Week, reach out. Email me at inspiredmoney.fm/Andy. Tell me what you like about the show and what you're doing to make a bigger impact with your money. As always, I'd appreciate if you write a review wherever you listen or at podchaser.com. Every review makes my day, whether it's 5 stars or even 1. You're listening to Inspired Money. I'm Andy Wong. I know that you have a soon-to-be-released book, The Thinking Patterns of Success, and you interviewed 7-figure earners and really focused on how they get more done with less effort. Are there lessons that you can teach us from the research that you've done?
So in the research I've done, following these people, looking at their thinking patterns and hearing their stories, generally speaking, the greatest opportunities are going to come from building relationships, are going to come from building systems to support you and are going to come from staying in your sweet spot. The problem is what is going to get you, the individual there, the fastest is going to be as unique as you are. So in that sense, it's incredibly helpful to take a look at your own thinking patterns so you can see what opportunities there are in your own mindset. But in the macro sense, building relationships, that comes from emotional bank deposits. Emotional bank deposits are things that are emotionally meaningful to the other person. And that's what builds high value relationships. It comes from building systems. Systems are structures that produce results without thought. Generally speaking, if you're the one doing the work, if you're the one checking things off your to-do list, then you're falling behind because doing a task doesn't address the reason it had to be done to start with. So tomorrow you'll have to do the task again. And this is an illusion. Working harder and faster doesn't move the ball forward because tomorrow you'll still have to work harder and faster. But by having systems and relationships to support you, then you won't ever have to do that work again. The trade-off is working harder and faster gives you the illusion of an immediate satisfaction because you think you got something done. Whereas building systems and relationships is a long-term strategy. It doesn't feel like you got anything done today, but tomorrow you don't have to do the task anymore. Being in your sweet spot is challenging for a lot of people. Sometimes they don't have clarity on what their sweet spot is, and they've tried journaling or meditating, and they're just not getting the clarity they need. So we use mindset push-ups for that to give them clarity. Sometimes they have the clarity, but they're devaluing that clarity. And this opens up amazing opportunities. Usually they aren't aware of how much they're devaluing it. For example, we had a guy, he's making $400,000 as a financial planner. And you'd think with an income like that, this is a very sophisticated individual. What are we going to share with him that he doesn't already know? Print up his thinking patterns. And sure enough, he was devaluing his sweet spot, his zone of genius. And the thing is, you just can't make a difference in the world and you're clumsy. You got to be in your genius. So seeing this as an opportunity, he restructures his day to spend more time in his genius, the one thing he did better than anything else. He restructures an agreement with one of his office administrators so they could help hold him accountable to that, and begins to build his days around his zone of genius. For him, that was talking to clients, talking to prospective clients. We see this a lot especially in financial planning. It's kind of interesting. As they crunch their numbers for the end of the year, they realize that the majority of their best clients, the people that they enjoy working with the most, the people that have the greatest net worth for them to manage, the majority of those clients came because they met them playing golf. That's where they first met them. So realizing that, they just restructure their week and they play golf 20 hours a week. And so here they're playing golf 20 week and their business is growing like crazy. Well, in this guy's case, being focused on building those kinds of relationships took him from 400,000 to 1.2 million over the next year and a half. And what's weird about that is you hear that story that he needed to spend more time on his sweet spot, the thing that he enjoyed the most, the thing he did the best, the thing that made the biggest difference. That sounds like no-brainer advice. It's like, well, shoot, I could have told him that. And it's true, you could have told him that, but he couldn't have heard it because wherever we're at in life, we're doing things that already make sense, which means that our breakthrough will at first not make sense. Printing up somebody's thinking patterns is what allows them to see the thing that they had been missing all this time.
What are some exercises or things that we can do to take action? Conceptually, it makes sense. You need to find the people to support you. You need to build the relationships. You need to stay in your sweet spot. I think most of us like to check our to-do list off because of that short-term gratification. We feel like we did something. But it sounds like you're saying that that's the shift in thinking that we all need to make. We need to have a longer term view, and you have to look at your to-do list totally differently than many of us do today.
So yeah, if you're doing the work, you're falling behind. And then as you realize the less you work, the more you make. What the shift in thinking is, instead of doing things, start causing things. How can this activity go forth without me? What would need to happen? And by building systems and relationships. Now, a lot of people in the beginning, they're hesitant. They say, well, I mean, I would delegate that. I would outsource it, but I don't have the money to hire somebody. Okay, that's true. You don't have the money to hire somebody. And the reason you don't is because you're spending your day doing tasks that could be delegated for $10 or $15 an hour. It's a catch-22. And no matter how fast you are at checking those tasks off your to-do list, you're just spending more of your day and your energy on the lowest paying activities. That's why you don't have extra money to hire somebody. Instead, start your day with the one thing you do better than anything else. End your day with the little stuff. If you'll do that by honoring your sweet spot, then it won't be very many days before you have the resources you need to delegate everything else. But what that looks like in somebody's situation is going to be as unique as they are, which is why we got to print up their thinking patterns to see what's going on and see where the biggest opportunity is.
I like that you address time and money in this discussion. Should we assume that by prioritizing our sweet spot and spending more time on that, do we have to think about how do we monetize that, or do we not worry about that?
Okay, good question. Totally valid, because there are some people that they believe genuinely that their sweet spot is making quilts or coloring or making music or whatever it is. And their main business is real estate. And so it's like, gosh, what does this have to do with real estate? So we think, well, this doesn't pay the bills. On one thing, that activity that makes you come alive is what gives your brain the building blocks it needs to form novel thoughts, see innovative solutions. It's like the chemical soup that your brain needs. So you're not doing it because it's going to pay the bills. You're doing it because it sharpens your mind to think at a higher level. And without that refreshing, it's just a reduction in return. If we're crying out loud, if you can't do it in 6 days, you're not going to do it in 7 days kind of thinking. That's one level. The other level is when we begin to look at what is the sweet spot of your business. And if you're between 0 and 100,000, the sweet spot of your business is going to be sales. Sales solves all ills. If you don't have enough money to outsource or delegate, if you don't have enough time to train, put your foot on the sales gas pedal, because the more new sales you have coming in, the more resources you have to delegate the fulfillment of the old agreements. After 100,000, between 100,000 and 1 million, recruiting solves all ills. If you feel like there's just too much to do and not enough time to do it, and you've got 17 hats to wear and all these stresses, recruiting solves all ills. Put your foot on the who can I find that knows more about this than I do? How can I barter with them, partner with them, trade with them, hire with them, consult with them so that they can stay in their sweet spot because they do this better than I do?
Of the successful business owners that you interviewed and studied, once they understand this change in thinking, is it something that they just lean fully into and gain momentum, or does one need to periodically do a self-check and remind themselves not to fall into old habits?
Some people see the opportunity and they don't do anything with it. Some people see the opportunity, they could care less, they just do it and don't think about it. Consequently, they get the most results because they're just doing it. They're not wrapped up in, oh, what does it say about me? And, oh, am I comfortable doing this? Do I like doing this? Oh, but does it? No, it works. It makes the difference. So they just do it. But then, like you said, is it like once and done? And that is where the beauty of time tracking comes in. Time tracking is just simply noting when you switch your attention from one task to another task. So you get a blank sheet of paper and you write down the time that you started your first task, making a cup of coffee. And then the time you started your next task, reading a book. And then the time you started your third task, checking email. If you'll do this, you'll notice a few things. One, you tend to stay on task longer because you realize if you take a break from checking email to surf Facebook, you have to write that down as a task that you switched. So you stay on track longer. Two, at the end of your day, in a glance, you will be able to see immediately how much time you spent in your highest income producing role. You only need to do something like this for 1 or 2 days, and you only need to do it about once or twice a year. But this will give you the feedback that you were talking about. Is this something that they have to keep returning to? Because as you go from 0 to 100 or 100 to a million or a million to 10 million, your skill set and prioritization of that is going to change. And so being aware of your time will give you the clarity. Are you hitting the same hurdles over and over? Or are you actually encountering new and different hurdles? Because that's going to determine, are you growing or are you just falling back into old habits?
Sounds like a really good practice. Jarrod, why is it important to have a purpose and to take on something bigger than ourselves?
So when you take on something bigger than yourself, it allows you to access part of your brain that you can't access any other way. And it allows you to make a difference in the world that you can't make any other way. On the individual level, it looks like some people struggle with smoking. They don't like smoking. I'm not against smoking. If you enjoy it, for crying out loud, keep doing it. But there are people that don't like it and they want to quit. They try to quit and then they start up again, and they try to quit and start up again. And they have like this cyclical relationship, this love-hate with it. And then one day they notice that their kids are smoking and they're like, chip off the old block. But deep down inside, they don't like that. And then one day they notice that their grandkids are smoking too. And in that moment, they lose all interest. No willpower, no 12-step program, no accountability. They have lost all taste for smoking because they're now up to something bigger. They're now interested in leaving a legacy, leaving footsteps for their grandkids to follow in. There are people that struggle with their weight, on the wagon, off the wagon, on the wagon, off the wagon. Well, obviously, because they're struggling with their weight, they're not up to something bigger in life. On the other hand, I've got friends that are training for triathlons. And during training season, they do not struggle with pulling by the donut shop on the way home from work. They don't even know their town has a donut shop. And it's not because they're superhuman or have super discipline or super focus. It's because they're up to something bigger. And because of that, they have lost taste for smaller distractions. Probably my favorite story about the difference this makes and being up to something bigger, aside from my personal experience with performance anxiety. Some people don't know this about Gandhi, but before Gandhi was the world famous leader, or not leader, but influencer that spoke so profoundly, he united an entire nation divided by civil war. Before he was that guy, he was a lawyer in England, and he was a crappy lawyer. On his first case, he fled the courtroom because he was terrified of speaking in public and his assistant had to close for him. On his second case, he went to his client the night before, gave him back all his money, said, "I cannot represent you in good conscience because I am terrified of speaking in public." So you got to wonder what changed. What took him from that guy who was afraid to the guy that spoke so profoundly, it's obvious he wasn't the least bit concerned what you thought of him. He just wanted peace in India. Well, after he failed in England, he went down to South Africa and decided he was going to set up shop in South Africa and be a lawyer down there. And while he was there, he noticed that his people, his countrymen, the people of India were horribly oppressed. And for whatever reason, he decided that there would be peace in India because he said so. He decided he was going to be up to the business of peace in India. Nobody asked him to do this. Nobody gave him permission to do this. Nobody knighted him or empowered or equipped him to do this. He just said, there's going to be peace in India because I said so. Now, when you are about peace for an entire nation, speaking in front of a crowd of even 100,000 people isn't even a blip on your radar. It's small potatoes. You don't even notice. You don't care how many people are in the crowd because you're not there for, are they going to like you? You're there for peace in India. And that's the power of taking on a bigger problem and how it empowers you to live your best life.
Wow, great story. So have a big why and you will rise to your purpose. I like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
For me, success is the feeling of progress. That's it. Meaningful progress towards a meaningful goal.
I like it. So keep moving forward. Don't look back. Well, thank you, Jarrod. Thanks for sharing your experience with us, your transformation that you had on stage, and some of the insights into the research that you've done to help small business owners and any listener trying to make more money, save time. I think that the whole world is your audience with this new book. So tell the Inspired Money listener where they can find your book when it comes out, when it's coming out, and how to find out more about you.
New book coming out next month, but you can hop over and grab the executive summary right now, get examples of what the thinking patterns look like of these 7, 8, 9-figure earners, get applications, exercises to do to start thinking the way they think, see what, sample mind scan reports look like. You can catch all that on my website, mindsetperformance.co. There's plenty of information on the mind scan, sample reports, executive summary for the book. If you want to reach out to me personally, I would love to talk and answer any questions I can. You can hit me up on the socials, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, JarrodHaning.
Awesome. I'll make sure that's all in the show notes. Thanks so much, Jarrod.
Thanks for having me.
So what was your favorite Inspired Money moment? Jarrod shared great stories and really practical advice. I know that I need to take a lot of daily to-do items off my plate. I don't know about you, but I need to build more processes and systems. It's the secret to having more free time while also being more productive. I loved the idea with Jarrod's stage fright. The thought of taking on a bigger problem caused other problems to fade away. Dream big, like Gandhi. Let's make the world a better place, not only because we can help the world, but it will make your life better. If you had a different favorite Inspired Money moment, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you, and we'll give you a shout out here on the podcast. I'll also mail you an Inspired Money sticker or button. If you want to challenge yourself to do one thing that scares you every day, to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, sign up for the free Inspired Money Fear Challenge at inspiredmoney.fm/challenge. Inspired Money is edited by Christopher Wright of Wright Media. Thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't yet subscribed, do it right now to ensure that you won't miss next week's show. I'll see you then. The music you're listening to right now and all other music on today's show is by the amazing Jim Kimo West. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.